Good morning, friends, and welcome to Wake Up in the Word. Thanks for joining me this morning. Go with me to John chapter 18, where yesterday we left Peter warming himself by the fire in the courtyard. Let's see what happens. He's already denied once that he's a follower of Jesus. Let's see where this takes us today. We're catching up with John chapter 18, beginning in verse 25, because John splits up the denial of Jesus with part of the questioning there in the high priest's house. And so the first part demonstrates how John is trying to find out what's going on, left Peter in the courtyard, and during that time, Peter has placed himself in a very difficult position, hanging out with folks around a fire. Now, that's always a comfortable position. You've been there. I was raised in the Boy Scouts and other events where you just go out and have a good time. And usually when there's a fire, and especially if folks are cold, everybody's warming themselves by the fire. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to start having conversation with people around the fire. That's all that was really happening. And as that conversation began to open up, you want to find out a little more about the people that are there, warming themselves by the fire. And that's where Peter got himself into trouble. Because at this point, what are you going to say when the obvious comes out? When people recognize who you are? When people can point at you and say, you are a follower of Jesus. Well, Peter was trying to stay incognito. Now, that's one of those words we don't like to use, but we do like to act that way sometimes. We don't want to be recognized, don't want anybody to point us out, don't want anybody to bring up certain sensitive subjects. So we try to disguise ourselves, stay out of the way. Don't let anybody know who we are. And when we enter that kind of realm, we can sometimes be unmasked publicly. And well, you know the rest of the story. That's where we pick up with Peter in verse number 25 of chapter 18, where it says, Now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself, and they said to him, You aren't one of his disciples too, are you? Here we go. Second time, he denied it and said, I am not. Now that's the exact same phrase he used over here with the first denial, back over in verse 17. I am not. Simple enough, thinking that perhaps this will shut everybody up and he can go about his business of just hanging out until John returns. But then it says in verse 26 that one of the high priest's servants, a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off, said, Didn't I see you with him in the garden? Peter denied it again. Immediately, a rooster crowed. I started to say a roaster. Yeah, that chicken might have been a roaster after that event. But it says, no, Peter denied it again, and immediately a rooster crowed. Now, wait a minute. You got to put all this together. And we'll put it together with part of the account from Matthew's gospel as well. But notice something that John brings in that the other gospel writers did not. The person who now recognizes Jesus recognizes Peter as a follower of Jesus, rather, says, Didn't I see you with him in the garden? In other words, here's one of the people that was out there arresting Jesus, and he's somehow kin. We don't know what kin. It just said a relative. Maybe he was a cousin of the man whose ear Peter had cut off. So here's one of Malchus's cousins, whatever that might be, aunt, uncle, somebody is related to Malchus. So they especially were sensitive to what had happened when Peter pulled out his sword. Sure, they recognize him. Absolutely. There's no doubt. And at this point, it says Peter denied it again, and the rooster crowed. Now, Matthew gives us some more details about this that John didn't think necessary to repeat. I want to take you back to Matthew chapter 26, where it says with that last denial, and it said, you really are one of them, since your accent gives you away. Luke records that he said, you're a Galilean. Oh, wow. It's tough having an accent, isn't it? A lot of you folks from Virginia, are you folks from New Jersey? Are you folks from Massachusetts? You have different accents. We in the South have accents. We've been pegged because of those before. I can remember having a meal in a restaurant in Canada with family when some folks just stopped as they came by our table and stared at us, and we said, hey, can we help you? And they looked back and said, oh, no, just keep talking. We were just listening to you talk. You people are from the South, aren't you? Yes, your accent gives you away. So here's Peter trying to be incognito. He's trying to hang out. And everything about his appearance, the way he talks, everything is giving him away as a follower of Jesus Christ. All the arrows are pointing to him. It's kind of obvious, and yet he's denying it. So what do you do to make sure these people understand you're not a follower of Jesus? In verse 74 of Matthew 26, we read these words. Speaking of Peter, it says, "Then he started to curse and to swear with an oath. 'I don't know the man.' And immediately the rooster crowed." So hang on. Peter has done everything possible to prove he's not a disciple of Jesus Christ in this one small setting. Thought he could get away with hiding out. He couldn't. To try to emphasize the point, he even does something no disciple of Jesus should ever do. That's right, we shouldn't get so angry on the golf course or at someone that has wronged us or anything else to start cursing and swearing. Yet so many followers of Jesus do that still. Folks, think about the implications of what your tongue says about you when you start ranting and raving. But that's exactly what Peter did, because he knew they would associate that with not a follower of Jesus, but a rejecter of Jesus. Someone that's following him certainly wouldn't talk this way. And it was at that particular moment, after one of Malchus's relatives has pointed out Peter again, that he, for the third and final time, denies Jesus. The big key here is what's going to happen next. After that rooster crowed, it says he went outside and wept bitterly. Friends, we do mess up at times, but the key to making things right when we mess up is an attitude of repentance. That's what Peter had that turned him around from this bottom depth that he had arrived at. And we're going to look at what that means tomorrow as we compare Peter's denial with Judas's betrayal. What's the difference? Isn't this all the same thing? Not hardly. We'll talk about that tomorrow as we finish up this week and wake up in the Word. Share it with a friend. Let's talk about it together tomorrow. God bless you. I'll see you then.